Welcome back to the 504 Core Podcast. Episode 75 today. Big episode. Back here with Zack Nagy. What's been up, Zack?
Not too much. I mean, we're sitting here wrapping up UCLA week. LSU got a big win. Obviously, it was much needed over an inferior opponent, but bottom line is that they came out, handled business in the second half, and now we're trending in the right direction. And you and I will kind of recap a little bit of that game and obviously lose Harold Perkins for the year, but we'll talk a little bit about that and what it means for the team and continue trending in the right direction with Alabama up on Saturday. But a lot of stuff circulating with LSU football. Like you said, we'll talk a little bit about that, some LSU women's basketball action, some recruiting, etc. You name it, we'll get it. So, yeah, pretty busy right now with LSU.
Yeah, for sure. We'll start off with the UCLA game. How do you think it went? Is it you thought they'd be doing a little bit better than that, or I mean, it was a tale of two halves, kind of like South Carolina, like a little concern in the first half, and then they kind of turned it around.
Yeah, for me, look, bottom line is that this team is not being, let's say, shot out of a cannon to start games. The first halves have been abysmal. Obviously, LSU got the ball first, and they marched down the field and put the ball in the end zone. But bottom line is that after those, first 15 to 20 plays that are scripted, heading into the game, after that, it's a little confusing. It's a little lackadaisical. So there's some improvements that need to be made in the first half moving forward, specifically trekking into SEC play. And then looking at the second half, man, look, this team is a second half team. I think you can pretty much say that now. You outscored UCLA 17-0. You shut them out in the second half. You played some complementary football, and that's something that Brian Kelly's been talking about significantly, is that he wants his offense to complement the defense and defense complement the offense. And we saw that in the second half against UCLA. And look, when you're playing these powerhouse SEC teams like Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Alabama, A&M, etc., you have to play all four quarters. You can't just play in the second half and expect to win the game. So you beat the inferior opponents like you had the last 3 weeks, and you'll do that again this weekend against South Al. But it's about continuing to polish your skill set and polish your game plans heading into SEC play. And they got a big win against UCLA, but you got to build off of this and then continue to kind of prepare to play all four quarters moving forward.
Do you think because I saw that they started 6 different safeties. Do you think Brian Kelly's kind of starting to think, let's start the younger guys now? Like you've kind of seen it with Burn. I mean, we touched last podcast about it, but you've seen it with Burn, you've seen it with Ryan, you've seen it with these older guys. You know what you're getting. Do you think he's kind of, trending towards using the younger guys now, maybe changing it up, or what do you think it is that's causing the second half spurts that weren't really?
Look, I've said time and time again that I'm all in on Deshaun Spears. I think this is a true freshman who is not playing like one. I think he has the full package. Obviously, he needs to begin getting a little bit better at lowering his head, lowering his shoulders, and getting in there and wrapping up on tackles. But this is a gamer. This is a guy who you can't keep off of the field. And I think what you were alluding to is Brian Kelly starting to look at the youngsters and say, okay, we got to get them on the field. And I think the answer to that would be yes. And it starts with the safety position of Deshaun Spears. This is a guy who is beginning to trend in the right direction, and I've been really impressed with what he brings to the table. But look, man, once you get to SEC play, you can't continue to throw out a pair of safeties every drive. You can't start with Deshaun Spears and Jordan Gilbert and then throw in, let's say, Sage Ryan and Major Burns or whatever rotation you want to work with. You have to stick to your guns. You have to find your two players so that they can develop that continuity, that rapport, or else you're going to be in a boatload of trouble come SEC play. So, look, I think he's starting to find his groove with who he wants to see on defense, and this week will be another telling sign of which rotation he wants to work with.
Is Gilbert separate his shoulder? Is he going to play this Saturday? Have you heard anything about that?
He's day-to-day right now. The two guys that Brian Kelly highlighted on your report yesterday was obviously Harold Perkins and then Zy Alexander, who went down with a concussion. So he's going to work through concussion protocols and work through there. But for Jordan Gilbert, he's going to be day-to-day. We'll see if he gets on the practice field later this week. But I'd be surprised to see him play against an inferior opponent in South Alabama. I think you just let him take this week off, go into the bye week, and continue to rehab, and then be ready for Ole Miss week 6.
Yeah, that would make sense. It seems like Gilbert's your main safety, just a solid player. I mean, he had the interception. Yeah, I think he's pretty good. Yeah, we'll touch on UCLA for a second. What do you think? What do you think it is though that they're just kind of? Do you think it's just adjustments at halftime? What do you think between the first and second half? You know what I mean? What do you think the difference has been in the first half and second half?
It's a good question, just because when in football, you script out your first, let's say, 15 to 20 plays. And Joe Sloan's a tremendous play caller, and he's continuing to find his stride, find his groove. But those first 15 to 20 plays that they draw up are perfect. I mean, they marched down the field in the blink of an eye and scored a touchdown in 2 to 3 minutes. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier carving that defense up like a turkey. He looks fantastic. Second drive of the game, he also looked pretty solid. But after that, the offensive play call gets a little sporadic. You don't know whether to stick to your passing guns or go to the rushing. There's kind of some confusion there. And then on the other side of the ball, there's just a lack of continuity in the secondary. To me, your defensive line has been kind of your glue so far this season, which if you told me that a couple of months ago, I would have laughed. Your interior defensive line is really starting to step up and really make impactful plays. And then your defensive ends, in my opinion, I think Savion Jones and Braden Swinson are two of the top. In my opinion, I think that's the best. I think it's the best defensive end duo in the country. I'll say it. I think it's one of the best. It's not the best. Obviously, South Carolina's fantastic, etc. So I'll kind of pull back on that claim a little bit. But that's a top 5 defensive end duo, a top 5 pass rushing duo in America right now. They're putting up fantastic numbers. They're tied for second or third in the country in sacks. They're doing some tremendous things, and Braden Swinson's been your key player on defense, the focal point. So I think your defensive line is a group that has its identity created. But your question is, what's the difference between the first and second half? And I think there's just a lack of identity in a couple different areas, and they slowly find their groove in the second half. It's just about doing all 4 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, now you're watching LSU in the first half, you're like, what is this team? And the second half is completely different. So it's frustrating. I'd much rather be a second half team, though, so I guess I will take it. One thing bad that happened in UCLA was Harold Perkins with his ACL. I was actually going back and just looking obviously it's a big loss. He's considered a first-round pick, but I don't think he's really been as impactful as what people were kind of expecting this year. He obviously tore his ACL. It's not a good thing, but who's kind of looking to step up in his position that you think, or are they going to try and change the defense around a little bit? What do you think the repercussions of this is going to be for LSU?
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the question here. When you look at Harold Perkins' production, yes, it wasn't this top tier, let's say, numbers from a box score perspective. But when it comes to game planning and working around different things, whether they like it or not, offenses have to game plan around Harold Perkins. This is a guy who can make an impactful, meaningful play in the blink of an eye and change the trajectory of a game in one play. So, yes, his numbers weren't fantastic, and he couldn't quite find his bread and butter on this defense just yet. But he was really starting to hit his stride as a strong side linebacker. And ultimately, you lose him for the year. So now you move forward to kind of life without Harold Perkins, and you're going to see a guy like Whit Weeks step up, West Weeks, Greg Penn. That's going to be your trio of linebackers that you're going to work with for the foreseeable future. And they were rolling with a 4-3 defense with Perkins on the field. Now you're going to have to go back to that 4-2-5 where you implement the star role. And the star is a hybrid safety linebacker role. That's where Major Burns has really been playing a lot of his ball at. So rather than a 4-3 where you have 3 linebackers at the second level, you go to a 4-2, 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers. Those linebackers will be Greg Penn and Whit Weeks. And then you'll go back to 5 defensive backs, Major Burns, the star, and then 4, let's say between safeties and cornerbacks. But it's a significant loss in the sense of a game plan perspective. But now you kind of get more snaps under Whit Weeks' belt, who's been one of your top 3 defensive pieces behind Braden Swinson and Savion Jones. So there's obviously some bad and some good. You can look at the pros and cons. You lose a guy like Harold Perkins. It sucks for him in his future. But at the end of the day, it's a next man up mentality, and we'll see what happens from here.
Do you think – well, I heard last season everyone was complaining about the Florida State game. Harold Perkins was like, why isn't he rushing the passer? Why is he playing linebacker? I always heard that. I know Moscona reported. I know a couple other people have said it, that Harold Perkins wanted the role of linebacker. Is that true? Have you heard anything about that, rather than more of like a pass rush specialist like he was in his freshman year?
Yeah, I mean, Perkins is a tweener. From a size perspective, he's not necessarily have the big bulkiness of an edge rusher, and he doesn't necessarily have, let's say, the size of a linebacker either. He's a tweener. And when it comes to the next level, he's going to be an inside linebacker, and that's where this coaching staff wanted to work him in, because that's where they felt that his bread and butter would be at the next level as an inside linebacker. But now it's up to, we'll say, hypothetically, if he goes pro, it's up to the NFL organizations to see where they want to put him at. The tricky question is if he comes back for another year or goes pro, we'll see what happens there. There's a lot of speculation. Obviously, Brian Kelly kind of shut that down yesterday, but he's a tweener, and LSU couldn't quite find where he was going to hit his groove at over these last 2 2 years and 4 games. But bottom line is that he's an elite athlete who's going to make money at the next level. It's just a matter of where they put him at.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see. Who's I keep blanking. I've been thinking about it. Who's a linebacker that was popping off? He was a freshman this year in camp. Do you know what I'm talking about?
There was a freshman who was doing really well in Devon Keys. He looked really, really
Keys.
good. The guy they're going to activate is going to be Xavier Atkins. He's a Louisiana native who played his last year of high school ball in Texas. He's a fantastic athlete. Xavier Atkins is a guy who was a 3-star recruit, but was kind of under-recruited in my opinion. I don't think his ranking necessarily backed how good he is. This is a guy who the coaching staff's really high on, and he was in redshirt status leading up until Perkins' injury. But now with Perkins obviously going for the year, this is a guy in Xavier Atkins who they're going to activate if need be and throw him on the field and throw him in the fire in year 1. Brian really alluded to that on Monday during his Monday presser, and they're high on him, man. I'm excited to see what they ultimately do.
How many games can you play to maintain your redshirt eligibility?
4.
Is it 3, 4? Okay. Yeah. So okay. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Even if you're active, or do you have to actually play?
Touch the field.
Touch the field. So you can be active and then not play and it won't count, right?
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. So, all right. Well, that's interesting to see. Yeah, no, it'll be good. South Alabama, pretty good offense. I wouldn't take the school lightly. I mean, you could say it's a tune-up game, you could say whatever it is, but they do have a pretty viable offense. What have you kind of seen, just hearing about, watching, whatever you've seen from them? What do you think of South Alabama this week?
Yeah, look, South Alabama has a potent offense. Their rushing attack is fantastic, and that's kind of like where their bread and butter is on the rushing attack. And now LSU is ultimately going to have to slow that down and have their defensive front show out once again. But it's a gimme. I mean, bottom line is this: is they're not going to lose that game. They're going to win it. I think it's going to be a little bit like the Nichols game, where South Alabama is going to come out with a couple of gut punches and work from there. But in the second half, it'll be all LSU. I haven't quite finished my scouting report just yet on South Al, but the rushing attack's potent. They have a mobile quarterback who can kind of extend the plays with his legs. But other than that, I think LSU's defensive front can slow that down. On offense, you're clicking on all cylinders against everybody. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier is playing fantastic ball. He's spreading the ball to numerous pass catchers. I mean, I think 9 receivers or 9 pass catchers, if you want to include Mason Taylor, caught balls on Saturday. So spreading the ball out, looking good on offense. I think LSU just comes out and kind of cruises in the second half to a non-conference victory that they need.
What are your keys of victory in this game? Just limit the run and not have too many big plays. I think it's pretty simple, huh?
Yeah, I think for me, that's obviously the goal. There is to score more points into the team and hold them back a little bit. But for me, it's all getting out to a fast start. You and I talked about it a couple of minutes ago. Scoring points is good and all, but come out to a fast start, do what you can, and really just lead Garrett Nussmeier down the field and put him in position to be successful. You have just a myriad of receivers to work with. Spread the ball out, let the guys see the field. And when I'm saying these guys, let your true freshmen see the field, let the youngsters see the field and get their feet wet. Keys of the game is really just start out fast, get off the field on third down. We saw that in the first half. UCLA was really, you were letting them convert on third down, fourth down, and stay on the field. So look, start off fast, get off the field on third down. And I really want to see Xavier Thomas touchdown on special teams. I think he's really just itching to get in the end zone. And I'm really hoping that this can be the week that he does just that, because he's been your most impactful transfer, and he's proven that time and time again. But in the end zone, he's going to get over the hump. And I think Brian Kelly and the rest of his coaching staff want to see that too.
Yeah, I've always been really high on Xavier Thomas. I thought he was going to be a little more impactful as a receiver, but like you said, there's just so many receivers now. Staying on the receiver topic, is Chris Hilton playing this week, or is he going to kind of wait and make his way?
Yeah, so Chris Hilton was active last week. Ultimately, it was a kind of a coaching decision not to play him just because they were controlling the pace and controlling the tempo. There was no need to throw him in the fire, but he will be on the field this week. I can almost guarantee that. If they don't, they're in some trouble, because this guy needs to get on the field ASAP and get his feet wet. All signs point to him touching the field against South Al and making some plays out there.
Yeah, no, I'd be curious to see if he plays and then when he does. So he's always been kind of that unsung, guy that's been flying on the radar. He's been kind of like that the past few years. This was supposed to be his breakout year, and unfortunately got hurt. So we'll see. Hopefully he gets back out there. What's the latest with recruiting? Anything going on, LSU football recruiting?
Yeah, look, man, last weekend was a big recruiting weekend for this program. The number 1 player in the country, and Jakeem Stewart on campus. and that's always about as big as it gets. He's a 2026 recruit right now, the number one player in the country, but he's going to reclassify. This is a guy who's going to go into the 2025 class. LSU's got their foot on the gas for him. He transferred out of St. Aug and transferred to Edna-Carr to New Orleans, and that was a really big deal to keep him in state. The only reason he transferred was because St. Aug wasn't going to give him the green light to reclassify and go about that process. But Edna-Carr looks like they're going to give him the green light to let him reclassify. He's ineligible this year. He won't be playing football. But it's really about graduating early so that he can get on a campus really in January and enroll early too. So it's a tricky process, but recruiting-wise, look, you're putting your foot on the gas for Stewart. Campus was fantastic. And then the other big-time targets were DJ Pickett, the number one safety in the country, and LSU commit. And to get him back on campus was a really, really big deal. This is a guy who's visited Florida. He's visited Miami. For me, that Florida visit isn't really notable. It was week one when Florida played Miami, and he was only going there because he has a family member on the Miami team. So he was kind of just checking with some family. But Miami's going to be keeping their foot on the gas here. The Hurricanes already hosted him for an unofficial. They're going to continue to be in his ear and push there. It's going to be an LSU-Miami kind of battle down the stretch until the signing period in December. But LSU got him back on campus. It's a big-time get. They rolled out the red carpet once again. He was blown away. So big-time guys on campus right there for Jakeem Stewart, DJ Pickett. Last one here, stop rambling on, is Elijah Haven, the number one player in the country in the 2027 class. He's a sophomore. He's cutting up. He's a Baton Rouge native who's doing everything. And Joe Sloan gave him the green light to come to any home he wants. Whenever he wants to come in, he can come in and be on the field. So getting Elijah Haven on campus is big time. So really, really big recruiting weekend for football, getting those three number one players at their position on campus. And now we kind of just trek on to South Al week and see who they get on campus. I'll have a visitors list in the coming days, but last weekend was big time for LSU for sure.
Haven's from Baton Rouge?
He goes to Dunham. He's a Baton Rouge native.
Yeah, he's number one player in the country, 6'4", 210 quarterback.
Yeah, that kid is an absolute freak.
Yeah, I've saw like little things about him. I haven't really done a deep dive into it. Yeah, I mean that's the kind of kid you got to lock down. I mean, if you get Bryce Underwood and Elijah Haven, I mean you're locking down the two number one players in the country. Yeah, and then possibly Stewart. I mean that's crazy, right? Stewart. Why am I ranking? Or Haven, Stewart, and Underwood. I mean, that'd be insane. You get three number one players in the country in a row. So that'd be nice. And then, yeah, was there any other recruits that were on campus this weekend that kind of flew under the radar or not really?
Yeah, you had Harlem Berry in town, but that's just a quick drive down the road from New Orleans. Yeah. Same thing goes for Stewart, but obviously he's not committed to the program, unlike Berry, who's been committed since January of this year. So to get Berry back on campus is fantastic. And just kind of getting him around the other commitments who were in and other targets is a really, really big deal. But for me, the talk of the town is going to be the Jakeem Stewart saga. I mean, this is something that's going to be so notable over the next couple of months just because he's reclassifying everybody. We'll say it's a rumor mill. All signs point to him reclassifying if he can get his grades check. But if he reclassifies, it's going to be an LSU, Ohio State, and USC battle down the stretch. I've spoken to a couple different people, and look, Frank Wilson, who's the recruiting guru for LSU, the New Orleans area is territory, and he's about as plugged in at St. Aug and Edna-Carr as it gets. I'd be surprised to see a guy like Jakeem Stewart leave Louisiana. I'd be surprised to see if Wilson allows a guy like Jakeem Stewart to leave the state and not suit up for the purple and gold. But ultimately, it's going to be a big-time push down the stretch, and it's an NIL battle out here. You have a lot of guys who are offering time bags, and it's for a kid who's only going to have played 1 year of high school football. He was ineligible his freshman year at Aug. He dominated his sophomore year. Now he's ineligible for his junior campaign after transferring, and then he'll enroll early at another school after reclassifying, so he'll bypass the senior campaign. It's a gamble, but it's a guy who's just fantastic, and he's proven that as a 6'6", 270-pound sophomore.
He only played 1 year, and he's ranked the number one player. He's that good.
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize he didn't play his junior year.
Yeah, he was ineligible. He was ineligible as a freshman. He played his sophomore year in 2023, and now as a junior, he transferred to Edna-Carr, and he's ineligible. So he won't have played this year, and then he's going to try to reclassify. So he won't have played his senior year either. He'll have only played 1 year of high school ball.
Why is it he's not playing because of grades, you said?
He's not playing because he transferred, and the LHSAA won't deem him eligible. because of the transfer rules that they have. He transferred midseason.
Oh, did he? Okay, interesting. And okay, yeah, no, that I didn't know that. That's really that's impressive. Honestly, beginning number one
Crazy as
overall
hell.
ranking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure the kid's good. Yeah, well, that's good to know. And then you said there's something about recruiting for LSU basketball, women's basketball.
Yeah, dude, Kim Mulkey and that coaching staff have really been hitting the ground running in September. I mean, it's been just about as impressive of a stretch as you could ask for. You've hosted 4 5-stars this 1 month alone. One of the weekends, you had 3 5-stars in at the same time, in Grace Knox, Zakiya Johnson, and Divine Barrage. And you already got Divine Barrage to commit, and now you're kind of putting on the gas with Grace Knox right now. And I was told last week the coaching staff went in-house, in-home with Grace Knox. They flew out to the West Coast, got in home in California, and really sat down with her and her family and continued to lay out the blueprint for what they expect from her. And Grace Knox is the top 10 player in the country. I mean, this is a girl who's a fantastic basketball player. All signs point to her wanting to leave the West Coast. And look, LSU and Texas are 2 schools that really put their foot on the gas for her, and they gotta land her because she's just that good of a talent. She's that impactful, and it all signs point to them not really in the running for Aaliyah Chavez anymore, the number 1 player in the country. She's asking for a tremendous NIL bag, and it just doesn't seem like LSU is willing to shuffle out that cash for her right now. So you continue to make your push right now. You have 2 5-stars committed right now in Bella Hines and Divine Barrage, and now you just continue to work for girls like Grace Knox and Zakiya Johnson. You can get those 4 players. I mean, you're looking at a potential number 2, number 1 class in the country. Not to mention Ayla McDowell, another 5-star who was on campus the weekend as well. So they're hitting the ground running right now on the recruiting trail, and I've been very, very impressed with what Kim Mulkey, Simone Augustus, Gary Reedus, and everybody else on that staff. I've been very impressed with what they're doing right now.
Where are they ranked right now?
I don't even think you can even put them in there just because they have 2 commits. They're probably in the top 10. But they got some work to do to continue climbing up those rankings. It's too early to tell. But you got 2 5-stars right now, and I think you're going to continue another 1 or 2 before it's all said and done.
Yeah. I mean, she's rolling. It's pretty impressive. So, yeah. Is there any, I was going to ask you score predictions for South Alabama.
Yeah, I know South Al's going to put some points on the board. I probably say right now 45-17. That's pretty close to where I was at last week with that UCLA game. I said 41-17. They ultimately pulled it out 34-17. So I think South Al's going to get in the end zone 1 or 2 times, settle for a field goal. So I'll probably sit back and just say probably 45-17 for now. I'll have my official score prediction in the next couple of days, but for now, I'll probably roll with that 41-17. What about you?
I was thinking 38-21. All I know is really South Alabama can put up points, and then LSU's defense can't stop a nosebleed in the first half. So I'll say something like that. Maybe they come out hot. 14-7 LSU, and you're getting worried, and then next thing you know, like we talked about last week, bigger schools versus smaller schools, they'll hang with them in the first half, and then just the athletes, the conditioning, literally everything just kind of takes over. So I could see something like that, like we talked about earlier too as well. LSU's a second half team, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, LSU should take care of business nonetheless. Is there anything else we didn't touch on?
No, I mean we drilled both recruiting.
Oh, Daniels and Burrow.
Dude, I mean, talk about an absolute fantastic recruiting pitch by just watching those 2 guys battle it out on Monday Night Football. Jaden Daniels is cementing himself as a superstar already after 3 weeks. He's doing fantastic things on the football field and really putting himself in position to be the Rookie of the Year. And not to mention another LSU great, Malik Neighbors, too, who's right up there with him. So, look, Jaden Daniels looked fantastic last night, 21 of 23, 50-plus passing yards, 3 total touchdowns, no picks. He threw more he tallied more touchdowns because he passed for 2, ran 1 in. He had more touchdowns in 3 than incompletions in 2. I mean, he looked absolutely fantastic, and he broke the rookie completion percentage record in a game with 91.3%. I mean, he just looked like an absolute phenom out there against a Bengals team who's struggling out the gate, but we know that they'll hit their stride eventually like they always do. Really good game from Jaden Daniels. Him and Terry McLaurin are really developing a nice 1-2 punch together, and they ultimately got a big-time win in prime time. So it was kind of like the battle of Heisman winners and Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels, and Jaden Daniels got his first one. It looked great.
Yeah, no, it was – did you watch it, or you just kind of tuned in here and
Yeah, I
there.
watched.
Yeah, it was. I watch Saints games and then like big NFL games. That was like the one game I watched the entire one. Like I rarely watch other NFL games into entirety. So unless I got like big fantasy implications or something. But yeah, no, I watched the entire one. It was pretty entertaining. Daniels is more impressive. Besides the stats, he's more impressive just on the eye test. Like he made so many plays that weren't there. That's just the pros of having a dynamic quarterback. So I hope Washington just keeps building on their offensive line. I think you'll really have something. Does he look skinny as hell to you out there, or what? Or he just looks like Jaden Daniels?
He's always been skinny, man. Like that's something that we've had to talk about time and time again with him. I remember him telling me last year that his mom had to sign a waiver in order to let him play football. I don't know if it was like in middle school or early high school, just because he was rail thin. He's worked with the strength and conditioning coaches, and he's trying to put on weight. It's a struggle for him, but yeah, bottom line, I mean, he looks rail thin. But it hasn't let him stop him so far. I mean, he's a speedster. He has the arm talent. He can launch that ball down the field in the blink of an eye. Like you said, passing the eye test from a play style perspective, but looking at the eye test, yeah, he looks skinny as hell out there.
Yeah, he looks lighter than he did at LSU. That or like NFL athletes are just that much bigger. One of the two, maybe both. But I mean, he looks like he's 185 pounds out there, 6'4". So, yeah, pretty crazy. But nonetheless, he's been super impressive. Yeah, him and Neighbors have got to be leading the race for offensive rookie of the year. So, yeah, just pray to God he stays healthy. That's all you can really hope for. So, yeah, I think we pretty much touched on everything. But yeah, if you guys can like and subscribe. You guys can like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.